Hello and welcome to another session of the My Solo 401k Financial Daily Webinar Series. Thanks so much for your patience as we had a little couple technical difficulties getting going here. If you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or StreamYard or Twitter and you have questions, please chat over your questions as we're here to go over your questions. Could be questions, could be topics. Just a word or two is enough. If you have a question, it's a good chance that others have it as well. So it's all good, whatever you want to discuss. As always, the presentation is being provided for educational purposes only and should not be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice, nor is it solicitation. We never discourage you from speaking to your tax or legal advisors. So we do have some content we wanted to discuss specifically around what's best, solo 401k versus SEP IRA in terms of retirement plans for self-employed individuals. So we definitely want to break that down. Before we get into that, though, we just want to highlight some of the resources. So we do go live twice a day, once at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're back again in the afternoon at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. There's a lot of ways to join the conversation. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. So hit that notifications button, and then you'll get notified for the live Q&A sessions where you can come and ask questions. I see we got a question already, which is fantastic. We'll turn to that in a moment. The other way is to go to our webinar page where we have our schedule listed there. If you register on the webinar page and submit your email, then you'll get an email after we're done with a link to the recording. Other great ways to participate or engage would be under community. It's totally free to join. It's not just for customers. It could be just for people who are thinking about it or just doing research. And we have robust forums on there. We have a deep dive library of videos and webinars. We have over 30,000 members. There's thousands and thousands of forums on there. So it's totally free to join, like I mentioned. So that's another great way to engage. We do have a lot of deep dive content as well that's on the docket. For example, tomorrow in the morning, we're going to be talking about how some of the considerations in choosing a solo 401k provider. In the afternoon, we're going to have a deep dive session, A to Z, talking about making mega backdoor Roth contributions. That's one of the top reasons people sign up with us. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get those notifications. You can watch them as a recording or come live and ask questions. Now, before we get into the topic, we also want to highlight, just because it's timely, let's do a quick update regarding the 2024 deadline. And then we'll go to the question that's been chatted over already. So, and if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to chat it up. We'll go through all the questions. So a common question we're hearing right now is whether there's still time to be able to set up a solo 401k for 2024. And the answer is yes, there is. And that's the simple answer. Now, of course, it does depend on what type of contribution you're looking to make, as well as how your self-employed business is taxed. So for those who are self-employed with a business taxed as a sole proprietorship, could be an LLC taxed as a sole proprietorship or just an unincorporated business, right? Where an individual is just reporting their income on Schedule C of the 1040. They could still, if they didn't set up a solo 401k by the end of last year, they could still set up a solo 401k now and make all types of contributions for 2024, whether employee, employer, or voluntary after tax. And they would just have to open up the account in time to make the contributions by April 15th. Now, if they're looking to make other types of contributions, or if they don't set up the account or in time to make contributions by April 15th, they could even still set up a plan and make employer or voluntary after-tax contributions by October 15th if they file a timely extension for their business tax return. In other words, their 1040. So for somebody whose business is taxed as a sole proprietorship, you could still set up a plan and make contributions, all types of contributions for 2024, employee, employer, or voluntary after-tax by April 15th. Otherwise, you can still set up a plan and make employer or voluntary after-tax contributions by October 15th if you file a timely extension for your business tax return. In other words, your 1040. Now, for all other types of self-employed businesses, let's say it's a business taxed as an S corp, or a business taxed as a partnership, or a business taxed as a C corp. If you didn't sign up with us or already have a plan somewhere else, could be a basic plan, for example, at a discount brokerage set up by December 31st of last year, then it's too late to set up a plan and make employee contributions. But there's still time to set up a plan and make employer and or voluntary after-tax contributions, which is how one makes mega backdoor Roth contributions for 2024. For all those other business types, they would just need to set up a plan in time to make the contributions, whether employer or voluntary after-tax for 2024, by the business tax return deadline, including any timely filed extension. So the C Corp deadline, right? The 1120, or the 1120S if the business is taxed as an S Corp, or the 1065 deadline if the business is taxed as a partnership. Okay, wonderful. So now let's go over that question that was chatted up. We don't want to keep you waiting too long. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to chat over questions. We're here to go over your questions. And then we're going to talk about solo 401k versus SEP IRA in terms of the best retirement plan for self-employed individuals. All right. So next, or the first question here is, thanks so much for bringing the question. How much of your IRA can you use for ROBs? Typical process and timeline for using the ROBs must be a C Corp, correct? So great question. That's one of the top reasons people sign up with us, is because they want to use their retirement money for business financing. Now, that wouldn't be through a solo 401k. It would be a different type of 401k, what they call a ROBS 401k, which stands for rollover as business startup. But that plan would allow someone to use all their retirement money that's eligible to be rolled over to the ROBS to fund a business in which they're going to be working. And it's not going to be subject to taxes or penalties. So in terms of money that's in an IRA, as long as that IRA is a pre-tax IRA, a traditional IRA, in other words, not a Roth IRA, then those pre-tax IRA funds can be rolled over to the ROBS 401k. You can roll over as much as you want. There's no limit. And then all the funds, I should say virtually all the funds, can be invested into the business. I say virtually because it would be prudent to leave at least a couple $100, for example, in that ROBS 401k account just to keep it open. So the flow of the money is going to be a two-step process. It's first going to be a direct rollover from the IRA to the new ROBS 401k. So that's not a taxable event. Then that new ROBS 401k, it's going to be sponsored by a corporation taxed as a C corporation. So that's the entity through which the person would now operate the business. That's the entity, that C corporation is the entity that would be funded with the 401k funds. So that 401k plan that's sponsored by the C corporation allows for investing in company stock. And there's no limit in terms of how much money the person can invest in company stock. Now, as far as the typical timeline, so that's the typical process, right? IRA to ROBS 401k, then invested in stock of the C corporation. Now the C corporation has the funds which can be used to start or buy a business. Typical timeline is typically about 3 weeks on the calendar. That's a good budget to have in terms of timeline. And yes, it definitely needs to be a corporation taxed as a C corporation, not an S. It has to be a C. Thanks so much for that great question. We appreciate it. All right. Yeah. Again, please don't hesitate to chat over questions. So now let's spend some time talking about solo 401k versus SEP IRA and what is the best retirement plan for self-employed individuals. And obviously the best plan is going to depend on each person's situation, et cetera. But we want to go over some of the top considerations that we hear from prospective customers, from existing customers, in terms of what they want to hear about. So now, one of the top reasons why someone would want to set up a retirement plan is because they want to save for retirement, right? They want to contribute. They want to take some of their non-retirement money and put it into a retirement plan. So if that's the objective, a solo 401k is going to beat out a SEP IRA 9 times out of 10. I mean, you should say 100 times out of 10. And why is that? Well, it's going to be easier to maximize contributions. It's going to be easier to maximize contributions with a solo 401k versus a SEP IRA. The individual is not going to need as much retirement money or as much earnings, as much self-employment earnings to justify contributions. They're not going to need as much retirement money to be able to hit the maximum. So if the goal is to be able to make contributions, a solo 401k definitely beats a SEP IRA. Now, why is that, right? Let's dig into that. Why is it easier to hit the maximum? Well, because with the SEP IRA, you can only make the employer contribution. There's only one bucket to fill up. Whereas with the solo 401k, you get that same bucket, the employer contribution, but then you get other buckets. So it's easier to hit the maximum. You can fill up multiple buckets at the same time, effectively. And with less income, with less self-employment income, you can hit that maximum. So the employer bucket, the employer contribution limit is a percentage of your compensation, right? For example, 25% of compensation for a business is taxed as an S corporation. So if you wanted to contribute $70,000 of income, if you want to contribute $70,000 to a SEP IRA, that individual would need 4 times that amount of earned self-employment compensation, of W-2 wages, for example, from their business taxed as an S corp. Whereas with the solo 401k, you not only have access to that employer bucket, you also have access to the employee bucket. And if you have a plan like ours, the mega backdoor Roth bucket, which is technically what they call a voluntary after-tax contribution. So the first bucket, the employee bucket, well, that's not a percentage, right? You can contribute 100% of your self-employment compensation, dollar for dollar, up to that employee contribution limit. For example, for 2025, it's $23,500. And then on top of that, if you're age 50 or older, you can contribute a catch-up contribution of $7,500. So another $7,500 if you've got that self-employment income to justify the contribution. And then if you're age 60 to 63, you can now make what's called a super catch-up contribution. So instead of another $7,500, you could do $11,250. So right off the bat, you can contribute 100% of your wages all the way up to that employee limit to a solo 401k. And then you could still make employer contributions on top of that. So with a lot less income, you're going to be able to contribute a lot more to the solo 401k relative to the SEP IRA. Now, if the goal is to be able to make Roth contributions, so where you have the potential for tax-free growth, the solo 401k is much better than the SEP IRA. Now, you might say, well, now with the SEP IRA, you can make Roth contributions. And that's true. If you have a SEP IRA from a provider that allows for Roth contributions, the rules now allow for Roth contributions to be made to a SEP IRA. But you're still limited to that employer contribution limit. It's still going to be just a fraction of your self-employment compensation. So you're still going to need a lot more self-employment compensation to justify that Roth contribution. Whereas with the solo 401k, if the goal is to be able to maximize Roth contributions, first of all, if you have a plan like ours that allows for Roth contributions to be made as employee contributions, well, those employee contributions can be made as Roth contributions, right? So that $23,500, or the catch-up contribution if you're over age 50 or older, or the super catch-up if you're age 60 to 63. So that's one way that you'll be able to easily and quickly fill up your Roth account. But then on top of that, if you got a plan like ours that allows for mega backdoor Roth contributions, then you can make those mega backdoor Roth contributions to the solo 401k. And unlike the employer contribution limit, where it's a percentage of your self-employment compensation, the voluntary after-tax contribution limit, and voluntary after-tax contributions is how one makes mega backdoor Roth contributions. That voluntary after-tax contribution limit is not a percentage. In other words, you can contribute dollar for dollar of your self-employment income up to the overall limit as a voluntary after-tax contribution. So that's why, for example, let's say somebody's under age 50 and they have at least $70,000 of self-employment compensation. With our solo 401k plan, they'd be able to contribute $70,000 to their solo 401k via Roth and mega backdoor Roth contributions and have it all end up in their Roth account. Whereas with a SEP IRA, even if they had a SEP IRA that allowed for Roth contributions, they're only going to be able to contribute a fraction of that $70,000 to the SEP IRA, because the only way they're going to be able to contribute is as an employer contribution. So from a contribution perspective, whether you're trying to make pre-tax contributions or Roth or a mixture of both, a solo 401k is definitely more advantageous than a SEP IRA. Now, there's other considerations, right? Another consideration would be being able to access the money via a loan. So no IRA plans are allowed to you cannot take a loan from any type of IRA, whether it's a SEP IRA or a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. Whereas if you have a plan like ours that allows for 401k participant loans, where you, the participant, are literally withdrawing money from your solo 401k as a loan, then you can take a loan. And those loan proceeds could be used for any purpose. They could be used for an emergency purpose or even just a personal purpose or an personal investment purpose. So we offer a plan that supports solo 401k loans. As part of our ongoing compliance support service, we also prepare the required loan documents that are needed to satisfy those solo 401k loan rules. And again, when you take that loan, it's not going to be subject to taxes or penalties as long as it's properly documented as a loan, which again, we handle that as an optional free service. In other words, no additional charge for our customers, and then paid back according to the terms. Now, the terms of that 401k loan are going to be that the individual can borrow up to 50% of the balance, not to exceed $50,000, needs to be paid back in equal payments, either monthly or quarterly, equal payments of principal and interest. The interest is prime plus 1% or a CD rate plus 2%, with those payments spread over a 5-year term. Okay, well, let's keep going. So another top consideration is going to be investments. So a lot of times with the SEP IRA, it's going to be limited to the investments that SEP IRA or the brokerage firm that's offering the SEP IRA offers. Whereas with our solo 401k plan, it's totally open, right? Whatever's allowed under the rules is allowed under our plan. So that's going to include all types of brokerage investments, right? Whether it's stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, as well as true alternative investments. It could be real estate or crypto or precious metals, private stock, private placements, etc. So for those who are not only worried about how much they can contribute, but then what are they going to invest their money in, and they want to have a wide range of investment options, including alternative investments, the solo 401k is definitely superior. And then moreover, for those that are focused on investing in alternative investments, the ability to invest with checkbook control based on feedback and experience is very important. And the reason that it's important, by and large, is because now they have access to their money quickly, so they can act quickly on investment opportunities. So it is possible to have a SEP IRA that allows for alternative investments, but per the IRA rules, that's going to require having a very special type of SEP IRA at a specialty provider or trust company where they hold the money. So you're not going to have checkbook access. Even if you have a SEP IRA that allows for alternative investments, It's not going to offer alternative investments with checkbook control, because those IRA rules are going to require that the IRA be at that third-party financial institution where they have the checkbook act control, right? So that the individual would have to go back to the SEP IRA provider, that specialty trust company or financial institution, to be able to direct their funds, to direct their investments. Whereas with the solo 401k, a truly self-directed solo 401k like our solo 401k, our clients have direct checkbook access, so they can act quickly to take advantage of investment opportunities. Then finally, looking at the features would be the tax credit. So our plan is going to make the self-employed business or individual eligible to claim $1,500 in tax credits. It's $500 per year for 3 consecutive years. So this tax credit is not available to a SEP IRA. It has to be a plan like ours, a solo 401k plan like ours, that includes the automatic contribution feature, the other notices and forms. So for all of our new customers, whether it's someone that's setting up a brand new solo 401k, or even if someone is upgrading a basic, say, solo 401k, upgrading an existing solo 401k plan to our plan, we'll automatically draft the documents to make the self-employed business eligible to claim that tax credit. Now, it's going to be, again, $500 per year for 3 consecutive years. So it has a tremendous impact on the cost, because that more than covers our fees for the first 7 years. Our fees for the solo 401k are $650, which includes the $525 establishment fee plus the first $125 annual fee. Then starting 12 months later, we charge our $125 annual fee. So if you added up all of our fees over 7 years, it would be less than the credit. So that's a tax credit, not a tax deduction. So it's a dollar for dollar reduction in the individual's tax liability. So the impact is tremendous. All right, well, those are some of the top considerations for a self-employed person that might be looking at a solo 401k versus a SEP IRA. All right, wonderful. We got another question here. Thank you so much for bringing the question. So again, please don't hesitate to chat over questions or topics, as we really appreciate the chance to discuss these. All right, so if contributing to voluntary after-tax account with intention of later conversion to Roth, are there any tax issues on the gains, interest, or investments made in the after-tax solo 401k account prior to conversion to the Roth bucket? Is there a limit to do the conversion? Should it be done immediately, or can it be done later, possibly years later? So there's no time limit. It can be done right away, but there's also no deadline. Now, most customers will choose to move the money over to the Roth before they start investing, because that way the gains are potentially tax-free. Like once they're in the Roth, they're going to be tax deferred and tax-free if, when the person later withdraws money from that Roth solo 401k account, they do it as a qualified Roth distribution, meaning they've had the account for at least 5 years and they're over age 59 and a half. Now, we do see it though, where there might be at least small gains in that after-tax account that ultimately get moved over to the Roth. So at that point, those small gains would be taxable for the year when they're moved over to the Roth. It'll be reportable. So we'll capture that information when we're capturing the information that's needed to prepare the 1099-R, because that move, regardless of whether there's gains or not, that move from the after-tax account to the Roth account is reportable on a 1099-R, which we handle that 1099-R as an optional free service. In other words, no additional charge for our customers. But there's no issues. If there are some gains, it'll just be taxable when they're moved to the Roth. They would all be moved over together, right? The contributions plus the gains, the basis plus the gains. But again, there's no deadline to move the money over. It could be done shortly after the contribution, or it could be done later. Again, no deadline. Thank you for bringing the good question. We appreciate the chance to discuss that topic. Mega Backdoor Roth is definitely a big, a popular reason that customers set up accounts with us. All right. So again, we would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got the morning session. We're going to talk about the considerations in choosing a solo 401k provider. In the afternoon session, we'll have some deep dive content focused on mega backdoor Roth contributions, really everything A to Z when it comes to those mega backdoor Roth contributions. We'll be focused tomorrow on businesses taxed as an S corp, but of course, all are welcome. And then we'll be back, next week with even more content on the mega backdoor Roth for different business types. You can see our channel that with the upcoming content, and then some recent content we had as well. So we go live, like I mentioned, twice a day, once in the morning at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Then we're back in the afternoon at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, you can always participate 24/7 in our forums. If you go to mysolo401k.net/buy community, it's totally free to join. All are welcome. So it's another great venue to learn, to share the knowledge. You can see our community here. We have forums, like I mentioned. So you got the forums there. All right. Well, it looks like that takes us to the end for today. Again, thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe if you're on YouTube. We appreciate the chance to discuss these topics. Until next time.